We all have a story to tell. Some are just beginning, others have been unfolding for years. Welcome to the Shaman Stories Podcast. Each week, I sit down with guests to explore their journeys into spirit, the challenges, awakenings, and the moments that shaped who they are today. So take a breath, settle in, and join me as we uncover the stories that lead us back to our true selves. Welcome to the Shaman Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Chenvert, and today with me is Laura Hoorweg. She's an international intuitive coach, a spiritual counselor, a psychic medium, and the founder of Spirit Speaks to Me. Thanks for being here, Laura.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's a real pleasure.
Why don't you give people a little synopsis of what exactly you do today, and then we're gonna, dive back into the history of how you got there.
Well, as we talked about, I'm a psychic medium. So what I do is I use my gifts in my spiritual counseling and my intuitive coaching to help people make their lives work. I really specialize in people who are going through different kinds of transitions, whether that is relationship transitions, work transitions, family transitions, and in some cases, dealing with the passing of a loved one. So in all those areas, and also transitions in terms of people on their spiritual journeys and or discovering what they want, what their actual spiritual gifts are, and maybe some development in that region as well. So that kind of is the Reader's Digest version, because I do quite a number of things.
Yeah, it's one of those, like even in my work, it's like, what exactly do you do? Well,
Yeah.
we can talk to your ancestors. I can show you how to build altars. We can bring back soul parts. I can teach you how to journey. It's always trying to get that nice elevator pitch that just kind of makes it concise. It can be challenging in our line of work, I find.
Well, it is challenging, and I'm always afraid I'm going to leave out an important part for that person that I'm actually speaking to, because you just never know sometimes why people are coming to you. And when you do a great number of things, you don't want to miss the thing that they're actually looking for. So, but I get some help because I have a big team of guides and angels. So I always say I couldn't do this work. Literally, I couldn't do this work without them. So I have a big team, so they help me to help others.
Nice. And so now with this podcast, I like to go back to the beginning of how you got to where you got. Like, were you grown up in a household that had some sort of connection to this type of work? Did you have a relative? Did it just kind of come
Nope.
on?
No, I think I came into well, my belief and the spiritual beliefs that I follow is that we all plan our journey in each lifetime before we come into that lifetime. So I don't know what I was thinking before I came into this lifetime, because I definitely made it as challenging as I possibly could, because I was a very spiritual, empathic, sensitive child coming into a very dysfunctional, very non-religious, non-spiritual, no nothing family. So originally, when I was very, very young, and I would pick up on all kinds of things, and I would talk to adults like an adult, and they'd kind of look at me like I was some kind of little monster. How does this little child know these things and all that? So I learned pretty quickly that really wasn't going to get me very far, and it actually just made my life difficult. So early on, I learned to sort of suppress those things and not really talk about them with certain people, especially adults. When I was about 11, I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. When I was 11, I decided that I wanted to find God and the angels. And of course, at that time, everybody said God and the angels was at church. Well, I didn't know one way or the other because, as I said, my family was not religious at all. So luckily, at that point, we were living in an area where there was 6 or 7 churches within walking distance of my home. So every Sunday for 6 or 7 weeks, I tromped off by myself, at 10 or 11 years old, to a different church every Sunday. And I pretty quickly found out, I met some nice people. I met some not so nice people. I heard some great music, and I had all kinds of different experiences, but I realized pretty quickly that God and the angels weren't there. So then I was again launched on another little journey. And I was probably about 11 then. So as I got into my preteens and teens, I got involved in the brownies and the guides, if you're American Girl Scouts, basically.
Yeah.
And then I found my real connection to spiritual, to God, whatever label you want to put it on it, it's all the same thing. Um, was through nature, was through the wilderness. And that led me to basically an out of body experience when I was 15. And I'm just going to put that in there. We can talk about that more later if you want, but I talk about that a lot. So it's one of those things that people always want to talk about. And then basically, I got wound up in other things. Because, people always think that let's just put it this way. The spiritual journey is not a straight line. Spiritual journey goes like this. Okay. I know I'm speaking to the choir, but everybody might not know this. Okay. So at different points, so my 20s were pretty unspiritual, I would say. I was into different things. I was a party hardy girl. I was having a good time, and spirituality didn't come into that a lot. When I got into my 30s, I started really doing a lot of work on myself to heal my childhood and everything that came before. And that's when I really started reading different books and really getting into spirituality and doing different kinds of practices and meeting different kind of people. Now, this was back in the quote unquote new age time, the real new age time when it just sort of started. And I learned pretty quickly that I didn't fit in there either, because there was a lot of people in the so-called New Age movement who basically took on the same kind of rigor as the righteousness, I'll say, of, and they deny it to their death, but of the church-going people. So they had their own set of rules, okay? And there was so much religiosity, which I considered religiosity in the so-called New Age movement, that didn't appeal to me. I'll give you some examples. Some of the examples were at the time I was smoking. So I was told to my face that I couldn't possibly be spiritual because I smoked. And I was also an omnivorous person. And I was also told that I couldn't possibly be spiritual because I ate meat. And there was even one person who told me that I just didn't wear the right clothes, because in those days it was the boho kind of hippie was the new age kind of way to dress. And if you didn't dress that way, then of course you're not spiritual. So all of those things, I went, bye bye. So I went on my own spiritual journey. So that carried on basically in my 30s and 40s. And then in my very early 50s, I had, through the sudden loss of my partner, I was launched again on another healing journey. Because if you've ever lost somebody very close to you, when you go through that process of death, losing them, of their death, and your grieving process, what ends up happening is everything that you haven't dealt with in your life, or that you thought you dealt with, but you really didn't, or that you shoved under the carpet and you tried to ignore, all that stuff comes up. So I went through a very, very intense couple of years after my partner died. This is when I did all kinds of things. I went to John of God, and he was a trance healer, trance medium in Brazil, and went through a 6-week program there. It was only supposed to originally be 2. It turned out to be 6. That's a whole nother story. And then I was led through that journey to ayahuasca, which we talked about a little bit before we came on air. And I ended up going to Peru and doing an intensive 3-week ayahuasca journey, which was pretty powerful. And then I came back and I thought I didn't know what I wanted to do, because I had left my job at the same. My life imploded and exploded all around when I was about 52, because my partner died. I quit a 30-year career because it was going into the tank, and it was like one thing after another. So it was quite a turning point in my spiritual journey. So that's pretty much it. And from then on, shortly after that healing journey is what prompted me into starting my own counseling and coaching practice, because I decided I wanted to help other people through their journeys. So that's how I got here. And that was about 12 years ago. Yeah, 12 years ago. So I've been doing this now full time for the last probably about 11 or 12 years.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah, there's a lot there I want to touch on too.
He's making notes furiously.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. There's a lot there. All good stuff. But yeah, I mean, just what you said about the spiritual journey being up and down. I think that's a
Yeah.
really important piece that people miss. I know I missed it in the beginning because I'm like, oh, I've done all this work. I'm enlightened. I'm in this
Yeah.
place. I'm speaking to my guides and my spirit, and I've transcended the issues I had before, and then the next thing comes around, and you're like, oh, goddamn.
Here we
Now I
go
got to
again.
start all over. Yeah, so it's always this ebb and flow, and a lot of people don't realize that it is a journey. It does have its ups. It's going to have its downs. New things are going to come out that you're going to have to address that you chose not to. Like in Shrek, where he's like, onions are like, or ogres
Yeah.
are like onions. We have layers. It's
Yeah.
the same thing for all of
Yeah.
us when we're doing this healing work. And then, yeah, the new age rules. I mean, we still see this stuff today, right? It's,
Yeah. You
oh,
still see it, but yeah.
you can't be a shaman or a healer because you're this skin color, or you're
Yes.
asking for this, and you're not wearing the traditional garb, or you're
Or you're
not.
charging for your services. I
Yeah,
can't believe I'm still hearing that, but
yeah.
I have still heard this. Yes.
It's like, I'm sorry, but I can't pay my rent on
Yeah.
energy sessions. Like, there's got to be a transactional somewhere. In the old
Yeah.
days, they
Well,
used
it's
to
an
trade.
energy exchange.
Yeah, they used to trade chickens, or working around the yard, or doing something to help out. We don't have that now. What we have is a monetary system. Unfortunately, that's just where we're at. But yeah, or the eating meat, smoking, drinking. I mean, you can make
All the
arguments that some things aren't good for you versus other things. Yeah, I get it, but that doesn't make you less of a person going down your path because you're living your life a certain way. As long as you're not hurting anybody and you're helping people, I think that's really all that matters.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And you know what? I was shown, because I try to make people realize this, but sometimes it's very difficult. Everything that happens to you throughout your life is part of your spiritual journey. It's part of what makes you who you are. And when I look back on, like, I talked about having a very challenging life, and especially a very challenging childhood and young adulthood. If I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be able to help the people the way that I do now,
Mhm.
because there's something so powerful about being able to look somebody in the eye and say, I know exactly how you feel because I've been there. That is so much different than kind of traditional counseling, book learning. And I'm not disking it by any stretch of the imagination, because it's needed. Okay, there's certain situations where it's needed, but it's not the only thing. And I've literally had people say to me, I think there's even a testimonial where uh, one of my clients said to me that she got more out of spending an hour session with me than she had gotten out of 3 hours of traditional counseling. So it just shows you that there are different ways, there are alternative ways. And even in the alternative vein, not everything is going to work for
Mhm.
every person. So you've got to find out what works with you.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm a believer that we have at least three tiers we have to work on. There's the mind, the body, and the spirit.
Yeah.
And if you're not addressing all three throughout your healing journey, you're missing out, because therapy, like I said, has its place. It's great. But if we have a blockage within our energetic field from that same trauma, fully understanding everything about that trauma mentally and logically is not going to help change the
No.
emotion or the reaction that you have physically, because it's still stuck either in your body or in your field. And I really wish we could somehow merge the whole system together, where it's like, yeah, you'll see your counselor on this day, you'll go see an energy
Yeah.
worker this day, and you're going to
Yeah.
go to the gym on this day.
Well, no, I think that's it. That is, well, it's starting to happen now, but that is definitely because that's how I work. That's how I've
Mhm.
worked for decades, actually. I've incorporated, there's nothing, because I feel that you should be incorporating anything that works for you. And it's, as you said, there's many, many different layers and many big, and I talk about physical, emotional is the one I add,
Yeah.
physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So I call that the four pillars, the four legs of the chair. And there's different things that can help you in each of those areas, and they're different for every person. So to me, as long as it works for you and you're getting value out of it, then it's valuable.
Yep. And sometimes, just like therapy, you got to give it a couple sessions to truly let it
Oh,
take effect.
yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's not a quick fix. It's never take the pill like you get at the
Ah,
drugstore.
I love you.
It's, you're not going to feel those, you're not going to feel the effects of a lot of these sessions or
Hey,
treatments. You'll feel
yeah.
better, but at least I
It's
find
a
in my
longer,
work,
it's a journey. I
yeah,
always to say to people it's a process, because I love when you talked about the pill, because that's one of my big quotes. I say, I really do sometimes get frustrated with people looking for a magic pill, because everybody wants kind of this one and done thing. Well, nothing
yeah,
in life is one and done. So why would you expect your healing to be one and done? And I don't care what kind of healing you're talking about, whether it's physical, mental, emotionally, or spiritual. There just isn't one and done. I've seen now, but don't get me wrong, I've seen amazing shifts in people just in one session,
mhm,
but that still doesn't mean it's one and done. You can make amazing sessions and amazing transitions in one session, but it doesn't mean that that's going to, you can have one session, and I don't care who it is, with anyone, and it's going to change your entire life and fix everything. But you can make amazing progress very rapidly if you
oh, yeah,
are, but see, that's dependent on yourself. You have to be willing to shift. It's just like when I quit smoking. I for years and years and years, decades, I tried to quit smoking. And I tell you, I tried every method under the sun, and I just couldn't get there. And then finally, I really made the decision that one of the things that helped me was it got ridiculously expensive. And I just looked how much money I was spending and started thinking about all the things I could do with that money other than burning it up, and also the health considerations. And, and I just went in and I tried something. I went and did hypnosis. And it was a package. I believe it was 4 or 5 sessions was their quit smoking package. And I was so skeptical that I couldn't be hypnotized, and B, that this wasn't going to work. I'm not kidding you. I actually brought a pack of cigarettes with me to the session, the first session, because I thought, okay, I'm going to go in. It's not going to work. I'm going to want to smoke after. That's how bad I was. And I actually went there, and I quit in one session. I literally came out of that session, threw the package of smokes in the garbage, and that was it. And I didn't have any kind of withdrawal, like no physical, no mental, no nothing. And that was amazing, because every other time, through every other method that I tried, I had massive physical and mental um, problems. Everything from massive headaches to massive cravings to extreme nervous, like just anxiety, all kinds of things went on. But nothing. I was just like free and clear. It was like I never smoked a day in my life. It was amazing. So
nice.
I just bring up that example because when you find something that really works for you, it can literally be, healing can be that quick.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah. I never want to
yeah,
discount that.
yeah,
I always like to set the expectations too of not everyone's going to, because it's like you said, it's also that mindset and what you truly
Yeah.
want. Because a lot of people might, oh, I need to quit smoking, but they don't really want to quit smoking.
No.
Or
And
I
that was
need to
me.
work on my trauma, but I don't want to
Yeah.
work on my trauma. And so if you're
Or
going in with that
or
mindset,
people who they'll sit there and they'll tell you like 15 times that this is what they want, but they really don't want it. They're either afraid, because whenever you change something that's become a fundamental part of your life, it changes your life. And that's what people are afraid of.
hmm,
Because as human beings, we hate change, because there's that element of you can't anticipate what it's going to do to you and what it's going to do to your life. And they're all sitting there going, oh, what, I want to change this, but what am I going to be like if I, what am I going to lose, or what bad thing is going to happen to me if I change, this, that, or the other thing. It's crazy, but we all do it. Everybody does
oh
it.
yeah,
So
it's that identity shift. Because then it's like,
yeah.
if I no longer have this identity, and we'll use smoking as the example, as a smoker,
Yeah.
I meet my friends during my lunch break. I take a
Yes,
cigarette break
that's
with my
true. That's true.
coworkers.
Yeah.
When I was in the military, I smoked because, I mean, one, I was addicted to it, but two was that was the only time we got to take a break. Because if we all went to the smoke
I
pit
didn't
and smoked a
smoke. Yeah.
cigarette, that's how you had a break. Versus the
Yeah.
non-smoker was stuck at the desk or stuck doing the work. We all got to walk away for our 10 to 15
That
minutes.
is that is true too. I hadn't thought about that really, but it is true, because it was an excuse to get out of the office. It's like, oh, I'm going for smoking. I'll be back in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, right? And nobody really argued with you. And other people couldn't really, actually, I never thought about it that way, but other people really couldn't do that because they really didn't have an excuse.
Yeah, they can't say, oh, I'm going to go for a walk for 10, 15 minutes. Same amount of
Yeah, and
time.
like,
But
yeah.
back then that was frowned upon as you weren't working, but smoking a cigarette was an acceptable reason to leave the office.
I know. Crazy, 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 crazy.
So with that, I do want to kind of, because you brought it up with the ayahuasca journey.
Oh,
So you mentioned doing a 3 month ayahuasca, or 3 week, excuse me. Three
oh
months would
God,
be
3 months.
very intense.
Oh, no, no. I wouldn't have survived 3 months. Oh,
And
well,
you
it's
mentioned that was like
interesting.
the founding shift for you after you had that.
Well, it's a funny story because when going in, I was staying at a center in the jungle, and it was run by a couple, and she was Peruvian and he was an American, but they had this amazing Peruvian shaman. He was I always had a picture of him in my mind. I don't think he was 40. I think he was actually probably about 60. He had to be, because I remember him saying that he'd been doing it over 40 years. Okay, so he had to be up in that neighborhood. And I wish he had spoke English. Actually, we had to go through translation thing. I wish I could have had, because I don't speak Spanish. So I wish I had been able to have a one-on-one with him. Anyway, I hadn't told them. I didn't think it made any difference that I was a psychic and that I was a sensitive. And so they have an initial dose that they give everybody of the ayahuasca, which is about, it's like about a shot glass full or three-quarters full. And so they gave the ayahuasca journey is supposed to last for about 4 hours. It's kind of like you go up and you stay on the plateau and you come down again. Well, with the initial dose, I was basically, you start about 8 o'clock because you have to wait till it's dark. So it goes from about 8 o'clock to midnight. I went from 8 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock the next morning, and I was still not fully back in my body. And the shaman just he's trying to figure out what's going on, and he just looks at me and he goes, in broken English, he goes, no, 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 no. He said, next time, he says, half, half. We need talking about half the dosage, right? So by the end of, well, probably by the end of the second week, he actually told me that I could go into ceremony and that I didn't even have to take the ayahuasca, that because the ayahuasca had built up in my system. And I was very dubious that this would actually work, but it actually did. I went on the same whole journey and everything without even actually having to take the ayahuasca. But the thing I wanted to talk about you about was one of the journeys was probably one of the most powerful journeys was a shamanic. It was based on the shamanic um, journey through the underworld. And actually, ayahuasca is a goddess, and she's the jungle goddess. She comes in three forms: the crone, the maiden, or as the serpent behind you. And she came to me, and it's a massive, massive snake. She comes to me as the snake, and she's like right in front of my face, and literally her head's this big, and she's talking to me. And she told me initially that she was going to take me on this journey to the underworld, and that some things I could talk about and some things I was not going to be allowed to talk about. So I said, okay, just make sure I know which is which. So we went through literally, I think I'm thinking back to Leary and back in the days, back in the 60s, with the LSD thing. It was a total psychedelic journey, but it was a psychedelic journey through the underworld. And it was wild. And all the way through the journey, she was teaching me things. And she was teaching me things. Some things she explained before, some things she explained whilst we were in the middle of the journey. And one of the things that she told me that I could talk about, which I thought was really interesting, just before we went down into the underworld, she said, whatever you do, do not smile, do not show your teeth. And I kind of looked at her. I said, why? And she said, that is a challenge. That is, you will get attacked. She said, don't smile. Don't show your teeth. You probably know all this stuff. Yeah, I thought it was absolutely wild. And it was an incredible journey. And I learned so much. And it was, it's hard. It was a psychedelic journey, but it was so real. I can't even explain to you how. Oh, you probably know what I'm talking about, but others won't. It was so real that there's no question in my mind that this actually happened. There were some other journeys that I went on that were kind of, because every time you do ayahuasca, it's a different experience. Like a lot of people don't realize this. They think it's just kind of a repeat thing. It's definitely not. It's a totally different journey. And that's the one I had, that journey. And the other one was, I would say, a psychedelic trip to heaven. Is probably the easiest way to, or, oh, okay. I've got people talking to me all the time. One of my guides said, he said, use the word paradise, okay, instead of using the word heaven. And that describes it. It was to this crystalline, amazing paradise place. And those are the those are the two journeys that had the most profound effect on me. One was extremely light. See, my guides told me a long time ago that I came in with this sort of predisposition to learn by opposites. You wonder why I had such an interesting and challenging life, because I am put through opposites. Things are either really, really good or really, really bad. And I always said that I'm going to, my memoir that I'm probably going to write at some point in time is going to be entitled The Best of Times and the Worst of Times. Because that is a real, it really describes my life. Because I've had, that's why I can't complain, because I've had some absolutely incredible experiences throughout my life. Like really wonderful, incredible things that haven't happened. And I think that distinguishes me from my two siblings, because we grow up in the same family. We went through all the same, or many of the same things, but yet I came out of it as a very different person. And even before I started all my healing journey, I was very lucky that I had very, very special people come into my life at very opportune times, which neither my older sister, or my younger brother had. And I think that's why I came out of that same family in a very different space than they did.
Nice. Yeah, and like you said, it's all part of the growth, right? It's things had to happen to take you to the next step, to take you to the next step. And as much as it sucks when you're in it in the moment, it's learning from them and growing
Oh,
from them.
yeah. Yeah.
And I tell clients all the time too, it's like we have to have some sort of challenge to have growth. We have to. Otherwise, we're never going to progress and advance anywhere. Because if you could just have everything you ever wanted and everything was perfect, you could eat all the food and never gain the weight, smoke all the cigarettes and never get the cancer.
Wow.
If everything was just perfect, what would you do, right? You would just get bored.
Well, well, I tell people that that's what it's like on the other side. Okay. And that's why we want to come here, because this is Schoolhouse Earth. We can progress because everything, everywhere, everything here, everything on the other side is all about evolving our souls. Okay. And we can evolve our souls so much faster on this side because of all those challenges. But because there's none of those challenges on the other side, yes, we still evolve on the other side, but it's very, very much slower than it is here. And that's why people are just, that's why they call it Schoolhouse Earth. And that's why souls are scrambling. And when I say souls are scrambling to get in here, I'm being very, very, it's accurate, because people are just, and especially now, there's another wave coming in. In case you hadn't noticed, there was quite a period when people were having very small families, like one or two children or none at all. And now all of a sudden you'll see people there. These big families have come up. Like people are having 3, 4, 5, 6 children, which that was like back in my mother's era. That's several generations back. There was always some people, but the average family shrank considerably, and now it's growing again, and people are having all those children. And the reason they're having all those children is because people got to have children in order for all the souls to get in. Okay, so there's another. They called it the baby boom. I think after World War II, there was what they called the baby boom between 1945. They bumped it up to about 1965, but I don't believe that. The real baby boom happened between basically 10 years, between 1945 and 1955 is the real baby boom. And I feel like that's happening again, in order to get more and more souls in for this huge transition that we're going through.
I guess with that, because I've always been curious, is Earth really the only school planet? Because we hear about all these other planets and all these other
Okay.
people coming here from other planets. Is there not
Yeah.
another school?
There are, but this is what I've been told over and over again by all my sources is that this is the only planet of free will. Okay. Every other space has some kind of what you would call predestination, which things are, we can't, like, for example, we talked about at the very beginning, we plan out our lives before we come into each reincarnation on the earth. But when we get here, if we decide we don't want to follow that plan, which a lot of people do, by the way, or they don't want to follow parts of it, they just go, "Oh, no, not going to do it." Okay? That cannot happen. This is what I've been shown and told, that this cannot happen on other planets. Everything is more rigid. You don't have this ability to make all these changes, and this self-determination doesn't exist. And that's what makes this planet so different. And that's what makes it a school, because there's all these unknowns and there's all these changes that we can make while we're here. And that brings in all kinds of new challenges that wouldn't be available to you elsewhere. Because there's not only other planets, there's also other dimensions, and there's all kinds of things going on, right? But this place, this earth, is extremely unique, which is why we are attracting so much attention, especially lately. I think we are very, very close And I've heard this from other psychics and other spiritual people who are connected. I think we're very, very close to actually having formal contact with other species that are related to us, from not only from outside of this earth, but also there's other beings on this earth, okay, that we're just not aware of, that having that connection as well. And that's going to happen. And and nobody's going to land on the White House lawn, especially now that Trump's there. But I couldn't help but slide that in. I just that was my Canadian coming out of me. Um, it's not going to happen that way, but it is going to happen. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, how they're going to orchestrate it, but it's not them getting connecting with our structures, our higher structures, our governments, or our military, or anything like that. They're going to figure out some way to en masse connect with the people. Okay, because it's not about hierarchies. It's actually about, it's like, well, that's a good analogy. Thank you. I love when I have help. It's like going to a big party. Okay, you don't walk into a big party and search out the host the first thing you do. Okay, you go to a party and you meet all these people and you introduce yourself as you go through the party. Okay, that's kind of the analogy that they're giving. So they want to introduce themselves to the people at the party, not whose house it is, or or who's giving the party. So I have no idea how that's going to happen, but I do I do have trust that they will do it in such a way that it's not going to make people, well, there's always going to be people that freak out a little bit, but they have the wherewithal not to make it so it sends shock waves and puts people into fear, because that's not what they want to do. It's not about fear.
And and with these different races, species, I guess dimension hoppers, whichever angle they're coming from, would they also be? They would be coming from those places that where everything's predestined, correct? They wouldn't have the free will like we have.
That's my understanding. Yes, the place, that's why we're so interesting to them, because the earth is so different. And a lot of those races and stuff have had, um, I don't know how to put it, basically a hand in some way, okay,
Hmm.
whether it's genetically or just helping or educating or whatever. They've had a hand in our development. There's so many, especially some of the species that are right here, that are here and just in a different phase, but also others from our galaxy. So it's like that. There's a good analogy. It's like a family reunion. When they all start introducing themselves, it's going to just be like this big family reunion when you're meeting like your fourth cousins, or all these different people that you know that they exist, but you've never met them before, and you don't really know. Like, let's face it, how much do you know about your fourth or fifth cousin?
Ah,
They're
don't even
so
know who
far.
they are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They're so far removed from you that you probably don't even have any knowledge of them. So that's the same kind of thing. That's what I've been shown. And and that's pretty cool. Like, I think it's pretty cool. I think there's a ever growing um section of people who look at it in that way. They're not fearful of it. They might be a little bit trepidatious, let's just say that, but they're really actually looking forward, because they, yes, they can help us, but they don't have all the answers. Like, I've been shown that we have just as much an ability to help them with different things as they have to help us. And
Hmm.
that's why it really is a family reunion, because when you meet family, you're inclined to help them and they're inclined to help you. You know,
No, I agree,
it's
and yeah, I mean, I'm a firm. I want to believe that all these things are out there. But there's also all those other, and I guess we can go down this thread if you want to keep going, but the all the different stories coming up, right? So the stories of reptilians enslaving us, and then
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Anunnaki coming, but then
Yeah.
there's also the Palladians and the Lemurians and all these different
Yeah.
species. Like it was like a, it seems from the different teachings and books and stories that are getting passed down to us, at some point, Earth itself was like a melting pot for all these different races. And they weren't supposed to mess with us, but then they started messing with us. And then we had giants and Sasquatches and all sorts of
Yeah, we had
interesting
all
things.
kinds of things. Well, I think, I'm not of, I absolutely believe, I don't believe that every being out there is benevolent. I think
Yeah,
that's extremely naive. Okay. And just because somebody is more technically advanced than you doesn't necessarily mean that they're more spiritually or emotionally advanced.
yeah,
And that's the other thing. But I do believe that there is the ones who really have the control and who are really kind of like the guardians of the galaxy. I love this movie. We'll add that in there. The guardians of the galaxy are the benevolent, are the police, the peaceful ones, are the ones that want to spread knowledge and help people. And I think that they have um, the most control over how things happen. Okay. And there's no question that it's like when you go to school, okay? And you're on the playground. There's a lot of nice people on the playground,
right.
but there's always a couple of bullies, okay? And the bullies for a while often get away with doing shitty stuff until somebody calls them on it, and then they get punished, and then they are not able to bully people anymore. You see? And I think that is a microcosm of the macrocosm of our existence. That there's people who don't have a lot of, how shall we say, that don't have a lot of goodwill. But I think that's a very small, even look at our earth, like the vast majority of people. And I really do believe this because this has been my experience that the vast majority of people are really good people
Yeah,
and they're trying to do their best. They may not always accomplish it, but they're always, at least they have the intent, okay, to do the right thing. But yeah, there's also a smaller group that is the exact opposite of that. And I think that a lot of people have a misconception of how large that group is because that's the group that we always hear about.
yeah.
We
Just like with
always
the
hear about,
news.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's all in the news and everything. And we hear about all these bad people doing this. I remember what really brings it to mind is how helicoptered parents are now and how parents believe, everybody drives their kid to school, whether they live 4 blocks or, there are age limits, but like, come on. To me, if your kids, unless it's horrible weather and your kids are at a decent age, like, 10, let's just say 10 years old and above, there's no reason why that child cannot walk to school.
yeah,
Okay. But that just doesn't happen these days because people are under the impression that there is all these bad people and things. The world is so much worse than it was before. I don't believe that at all. There's always been bad people, and there's always been people that will mistreat children. And it hasn't, the percentage of those people, I don't believe, has increased. And in fact, I would be willing to say that it's probably, in a lot of ways, it's probably decreased because people are much, or at least their ability to cause trouble has decreased because people are so much more aware of it now than they used to be. Okay, so I just think this hyper idea of, and you know what it does? It breeds children that are afraid,
hmm,
and fear is the worst. It's toxic. It's toxic. And if you bring up a child who's always in fear. They're afraid of being outside. Oh my God, they can't walk to school. They can't go to the playground without mom or dad there. You know, um, that's the way, if that's the way you're brought up, my God, no wonder there's so many kids, teenagers and adults suffering from anxiety and all these different things. It's because that's the way they've been brought up,
Oh, yeah. And again,
you
going
know?
back to the media influencing the parents, and
Oh,
then
yeah. Yeah.
social media now is the whole big thing. It's everyone's got an opinion, whether or not it's true or not. They're just sensationalizing
Exactly.
everything they say just so that somebody pays attention to them and they get those 2,000
Like,
likes so they can make the
yeah.
$2 in profit. It's like it's. I have two kids myself. One's 15, one's
Yeah.
10, and it's just like every day it's like something new, and it's like I'm not giving in to the fear of this. It's
No.
back when I grew up in the 80s, and it was, razor blades in the candy, and all the parents were
Yeah.
freaking
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
or, the
Yeah.
satanic panic of D&D. Everybody's freaking out about it. Now it's, you know,
Okay, I'm
COVID's
going to
still
give you an
hang.
example because you use that example just to show you how things haven't changed. You said you grew up in the 80s.
Yep.
I was born in 1961. So I was a kid in the 60s and the 70s, basically. And the razor blade thing was a thing back then. I'm not kidding you. My mom would take our candy when we came from home, dump out the bag, any like fruits or anything that wasn't wrapped that could be possibly tampered with, boom, out in the garbage. So this is what I'm saying. Okay. Nothing has changed. Okay. It's our perception of those things that has changed.
Well, now it's drugs in the candy. I live in Washington State, so,
Yeah.
pot's legal, and they're like, oh, they might put pot gummies in the bag. I'm like, no person's going to spend $1,000 on pot gummies to hand out to
Yeah, hand
kids,
them out.
even as a joke. Like, they're not going to do that. If they do, it's because they got really high and they weren't paying attention. But, but it's not going to be a malicious thing.
Well,
Like,
that's what I mean. But that's what I mean. There's always been those kinds of people. It's not that they've suddenly multiplied, and that there's so many more of them that you have to be ridiculously paranoid of your kids. I don't mean don't be responsible,
oh yeah,
but you cannot be. Kids just don't grow up properly. Kids have to become self-sufficient. They have to have adventures. They have to learn how to self-regulate. They have to learn who to trust and not to trust. And if you're doing it, if you're keeping them in this little cotton ball and you're wrapping them up in cotton wool and you don't let them walk anywhere or do anything because you're afraid something's going to happen, well, guess what? And you know what? This is what I've had a couple of talks with a few parents. Predators look for fearful people. Okay,
hmm.
whether you're a fearful woman or you're a fearful child, because those are the two main victims, shall we say, or that predators go after. And if your kids are fearful and they're always looking over their shoulder and because you walk different, you hold your body different, and a predator sees that, and what you're doing is you're actually making your child a target. Because if your child is walking down the street and they're really fearful and they've got that sense, that energy and their posture and everything, you're just making them look much more attractive to the bad people. Okay. So you're not doing yourself any favors, unfortunately. And the same thing with women. I tell women this all the time too, is that when you're out, you've got to walk confidently. You've got to hold your head high. You've got to be aware of what's going on around you, but you can't be, looking at everything and starting at every noise, because the same thing, you make yourself a target.
Yeah. And most of the time, everyone's more concerned about how they look to others than they're not even paying attention to what's going around them. Like it's,
Now they got their face in their phone.
yeah, that's the new one too. Like just, like my oldest, he was walking with his phone. Like, put your phone away, dude. We're walking on a street. You can look at it later. pay attention to what's going on
Yeah.
around you.
Oh, I've seen adults not even look, like having their face in the phone and just step right off the side of
Yep.
the sidewalk into the street. And I've nearly hit a couple of people because they literally don't even stop. They just walk. They don't look. They just walk right out in front of traffic. It's crazy.
Yeah,
But anyway.
but going back to the kind of what you were mentioning with the disclosure, do you think, because there's a bunch of prophecies right now, there's a bunch of astrological stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
I've talked about it on the show before, but it's really around by 2030, 2032, we're supposed to be on like a new age, by all these different
Yeah.
calendars and
Yeah.
prophecies. And we're kind of at that turning point of either, cyberpunk dystopian future, or everything starts getting better. Maybe not perfect
Okay.
paradise, but
Yeah. Okay. Well, back in 2020, my guide said to me that by 2030, that when we got to 2030, we'd look back to 2020 and go, oh my God, we wouldn't even recognize the world because it would have changed that much. Like they basically said that 300 years of change was going to happen in 10. Okay.
Jeez.
And if you look at the vast majority in the last 300 years, the vast majority of change has happened in the last 100 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So most people can't even wrap their head around 300 years. So I just say, okay, so most of the change has all happened in the last 100 years. So even if you're looking at that, we're talking about a tenfold increase in the rate of change. Okay. And now we are now in 2026. So we feel, okay, we just sort of started 2026. So let's say we're halfway through because we finished 2025. So I've been shown that everything is just going to keep escalating. And the reason I believe those prophecies is, as a psychic, when I try to reach out past 2030, I can't see really past 2030. Okay. And it's like there's a veil, like literally, we've talked about the veil between words. Well, between worlds, there's literally 2030, there's a veil, and you can't really get clearly past that. And this started to really spook me. And I asked my guys, I said, what is going on? Why is that there? And they said, don't freak out about it. Because I started wondering if everything ended at 2030. Because I couldn't see past there. They said, no, that's not what it's about. They said, I love the way they do this. They said, look at your hand. And they're saying, like, your wrist is 2030. So after your wrist, there's 5 fingers. And they said there's basically about 5 different paths that we could take. And by the way, they're all good. Okay. It's not that one's bad. So they're all there. It's just that we as humanity are going to make the choice as to which way to go. So even my guides and people on the other side don't really know what's going to happen because it's going to be a collective choice. So there's a whole bunch of different things that can happen, like 4 or 5 different roads that we could go down. They're all good, but they all look slightly different. Okay. And some of them are really different, actually. But it's not
Could you
something
give some
to
examples
fear.
of some of these roads?
Well, okay. They said we've been talking about this. One of those roads, and it's probably, you can't totally discern between each one because some of them have property. They all have some of the properties of all of them. Okay.
There's some overlapping.
And there's definitely some overlap, but they're all kind of versions of kind of the new age version of the when you talk about the Aquarian era, that's what the peace, love, understanding, whole new way. This is a big one because we just talked a lot about this whole new way. You'll love this because you got kids. A whole new way of raising children. Okay. And it's really back to some of the stuff that was before. It's really, children are going to be raised by the community. Okay. the way they used to be, that tribal idea of it takes a village to raise a child. This is where we've gone off the rails, okay?
Hmm.
Because what's happened, and even in our most recent past, we used to have multi-generational households where
Yeah.
children were raised by grandparents, sometimes even great grandparents, uncles, aunts, not just their mother and father, okay? Or not just by one parent, okay? This is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to the human race is this fractured families. Because fractured families creates fractured adults. And then fractured adults have more fractured kids. And it just it's it's like ancestral karma. It just keeps building on the generation before. And this is why we have so many problems and we have so many ill-adapted, shall we say, adults because of the way that they've been raised and because of the way their parents were raised. And their parents were raised that way because their grandparents were, it just goes on and on and on. So there's a huge amount. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Thank you. Ancestral karma will be cleared. We'll get rid of all that junk. Okay, all that stuff will be gone. And we'll start seeing, I don't know, there's a lot of people who talk about telepathy and mind reading and all that. I don't believe that's what it will be. I believe it will be an empathic ability where, as if I say something to you, I will be able to feel immediately how you feel about it. Okay. And that will change the way. This is one of the things that the internet has and this whole texting thing, because people will say things in text or online that they would never dream of saying to someone face to face. Okay. Well, just imagine this is kind of the opposite of that. Just imagine if every time you said something to somebody, you felt immediately how what you were saying made them feel. Okay. That would change the way you spoke to people immeasurably. Okay. Because you'd actually be feeling their feelings. And if you said something really nasty to somebody and it made them feel horrible, you would feel that in your body. Okay. So that pretty quick time would make change how you spoke to people. Okay. What else? What's another one? So huge change in rearing children, which is going to make totally different kinds of adults. Our interactions are going to change between us. And the other one, the other really big change is we talked about having communication with all these other different species. That is going to totally change. Because look at one of the major problems in our world, okay? It's racism, it's sexism, it's all these political, it's people's, having bigoted ideas about other people for ridiculous reasons, because how somebody dressed, what color of skin they had, what kind of, religious beliefs they have, all those things. If you look at all the problems on earth, they're all caused by one of them or multiple ones of those. Okay. That is all going to disappear because it's pretty hard to be racist when you got 18 different races, not even from this planet. And then you find out that we as individuals, I don't care what color your skin is, we all contain genetics passed down to us from other races that have been on this planet before us. Okay, they've proven it. They're already discovering it. Like, they don't. For a long time, they didn't understand. They considered Neanderthal not to be even really quote unquote human. Homo sapien. And then with the genetics, they found out that almost everybody on Earth has some level of Neanderthal DNA in them. Okay, there's only small pockets around the world that don't, but the vast majority of people have, to some degree, Neanderthal DNA. And forever, they considered that Neanderthals weren't even quote unquote human, Homo sapiens, And so it's laughable when you look. And that's only to the level that we're to now. Like there's a whole bunch of things that I've been shown that we have no idea about. Like we just have none about in terms of where we come from. And, you talked about the giants and all these things. And, there's all these different races that have been part of our history, ancient history that we don't know anything about. That's the other big thing. Oh, they like five. They always want to give us five. So number five is we're actually going to find out about our true history, our real history. Okay, because a lot of the stuff that we have been told and we've been taught is just straight up BS. Is a lie.
That's interesting too, because on that one, I was just listening earlier. A random podcast came on my YouTube
Yeah.
when I wasn't paying attention, and it was a lady talking about Edgar Casey and how he
Yep.
mentioned about the vaults underneath the Sphinx, and it's supposed to have all of our history
Yep.
within there, and that there's actually people right now looking more deeply into it and scanning it, and they're really trying hard to get down into those
Well, they've
vaults.
actually found out that there is a space down there.
Yeah.
There is something there, and that's just very, very recent. At least it coming out into real science, like they're actually
Mhm.
admitting it. I don't know. I have a feeling that certain people have known about that for a very, very long time, but at least it's now been confirmed that space beneath the paws actually exists.
It's just getting permission from the Egyptian government and everyone else to even
Yeah.
let them look down
Well,
further.
see, there's a problem. There's a problem in of itself, okay? Because the Egyptians, the people who are, I'm not going to say the Egyptian people, but the people who have control
Yeah.
over the narrative of the Egyptian culture, they have they're very invested in the story that they've told and the story that like even the age of the Sphinx. It's been proved scientifically by some of these geologists and stuff that
Yeah.
the Sphinx is way older, like tens of hundreds of thousands of years older than they have been saying. But you see, these people have all been saying the same thing for so long that if they start saying something different now, then they feel that they totally erode their own credibility. But it's really stupid because the whole basis of science is that new discoveries are made all the time. That's the whole thing of science. You're supposed to, you have a hypothesis, you kind of prove it, and then other things happen, you find out new information, then you have a new hypothesis. And that's the way science is supposed to work. Oh, that's the other thing. Oh, they're just going like 60. It's funny how you brought that out. Our whole idea of science is going to change radically, like just unbelievably radically. And all sciences, like genetics and physics and medicine and what else? Oh, anthropology. Of course, anthropology is going to change because we've been taught that there's this linear. This is perfect place to end up. That there's this linear progression of um, of development. Okay, we go from the underdeveloped and we get more developed, more developed as time goes. That's total shit again. Okay, there has been highly developed civilizations that have been lost through catastrophe.
Yeah.
This has been a cycle that's been going on the earth for millions and millions. Well, they just said billions. Okay, so there you go, billions of years. Okay. So yeah, it's going to be a real wake up call. And the thing is, it's going to one of the biggest areas. Oh, this is the other area, number seven. We're going to stop at number seven. Okay, is religion, is organized religion, because, and I'm not picking on any specific religion. All the religions are in for a huge wake up call because their own belief system goes back, so doesn't even go back far enough, and it's been corrupted. And I would say that every single Doesn't matter which religion or organized religion you're talking about, because they were all corrupted, because they were all used as power over the people. They were used in the wrong, in ways that they were never meant to be used. So they've all been corrupted to some degree or another. They're saying some have been more corrupted than others, but they've all been corrupted. So that's another huge thing that's going to change. And, it's going to change in a way. I don't even know how to express this. It's going to change in a way that everybody knows the real truth of it, but everybody will be allowed to practice in the way that they wish to practice, if that makes sense. Okay. So it's like everybody it's like there is kind of like only one overall belief system, because that is the truth. But then there's also all kinds of room for people to embrace that truth in any way they wish to embrace it. So I think what that really means is religion in the way that we know religion will disappear. It will become something totally different. And it'd be more like spirituality, and the real spirituality. I'm not talking about the New Age movement. I'm talking about spirituality in the sense that everybody knows the truth, but you can embrace that truth and practice that truth in any way that you want to. It's actually going to end up more like the indigenous belief systems, more like based on individuals' perception and connection to energy in the earth. There you go.
Okay. That was actually going to be one of my follow-up questions on that was where do you guys see like energy work or the way we do things in the future? Is that going to shift and be more added with technology, or?
Yes. If you they always show, if you've read anything or learned anything about I'm not talking about Atlantis was a corrupted version. Okay, I'm talking about going back to like Lemuria and before Lemuria, where everything was energy, energy healing, energy crystals, sound, light, all those things. And not only for healing, but also all of our technologies in terms of energy and things we build and create. They're bringing me back to that. Okay, remember I told you I had those two experiences on ayahuasca.
Yep.
There was the shamanic journey to the underworld, and then there was that journey to paradise. They said it's going to look like my journey to paradise. And that, I didn't really talk about that too much. That was, everything was built out of crystals. Like everything looked like crystal palaces, crystal buildings. Everything was sound and light. And I believe that's what actually Lemuria looked like. That's how Lemuria functioned. And that's how we're also physically, when we first came to this planet as souls, we were actually more in a light body. Our bodies were more, very, very much less dense. They were very, very etherical bodies. We still had physical bodies, but they were very much more etherical. And we're moving again back to that. That's part of the Aquarian age, is our moving back to, we're still going to have, as long as we're on Earth. Okay, they've made this very clear. As long as we're on Earth, we have to have a body. But that body is going to be so different than what we have now. It's going to be much more back to that light body. Again, very, very different than what we are now. And some of our problems, some of our issues, both physical, mental, and emotional, are all caused by being in these very, very dense bodies. Okay, because these are very, very dense. And as we move back to more of the etherical light bodies, a lot of those issues and problems are going to disappear. And we're also going to live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay.
That's,
So,
I'm sorry, I just want to touch up on that because it's
yeah.
interesting because one of the prophecies I mentioned, it's well known down in like Peru, but it's called the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. It's about the
Yeah.
eagle and the condor meeting together. The eagle is North America, but it's really about the mind and technology, and the condor is about the ancient ways,
Yeah.
living off the earth and how they're going to merge together. So technology working with, the traditional ways of doing things and
Yeah.
how they can help each other and help the earth, but still give back. And then one of my teachers actually mentioned how the next generation of people coming through are going to be called Homo luminous. Now they're
Yes.
going to be more light bodies versus the
Yeah.
heavy dense that we might be.
Yeah.
And so it's all coming together.
It's all coming together. And even people who have been in, let's just call it the traditional denser bodies, we are going to have the opportunity to, that's what they talk about, enlightenment. And so many people, enlightenment actually means leaving the body. And I keep telling people that's not what it means. It means raising your vibration in the body that you have now. So if you raise your vibration, you get closer and closer to that Homo luminous that you were talking about. Okay, but there's definitely the new kids who are coming in. Not all of them, but a great percentage of them are going. They're going to have different DNA. And they're also going to not forget. Like when we come in lifetime after lifetime, we have forgotten all that came before, or most people have. Okay. That is also going to end. In terms of the new kids who are coming in, they're going to remember all their past lives and all the things that happened to them. So that instead of having to recreate these lessons and try to remember things that they learned in the past, they will have instant access. And that's the other thing. Even people who are adults now can develop that connection between them and their higher selves. And your higher self stores all that information of every single lifetime you've ever had, every achievement you've made, all the skills that you've learned. So just imagine, it's like having your own library of all these skills that you gained in other lifetimes, and all of a sudden that you have access to that. It's like fantastic. And it's going to be very, very different. Now, all of this isn't going to happen instantaneously on 2030. I want to make this very clear. Okay. That's not how it's going to work. But it is going to be 2030, I think, is going to, that period you mentioned, 2032 as well. I think that is the, how shall I put, the ignition point for all of those things starting to come in. I don't believe. How old are you?
I'm 45.
Yeah, you might actually, well, you'll probably see more of this than I, unless that whole luminescence thing, which I'm hoping happens faster. And there is a possibility. See, this is the thing. The things that happen, remember I said things that happen after 2030 are going to be a collective choice. Now, when I say collective, people tend to think of majority rules. That's not the way it works. Okay. The way that energy works is you basically need to have at least 10% of the population moving in that direction in order to take everybody with you. So it's not like we have to have 51%, okay, of the population. You don't need that much. And really, it's not like we're going to go and have massive referendum votes on which path we want to take. That's not what's going to happen. Okay. It's basically an energetic and a mental uh, it's measured by the mass consciousness. Okay, there's a energy field around the earth that has mass consciousness of what everybody's thinking, feeling, and focused on. Okay, and it's the degree to that, how quickly that mass consciousness changes, as to how quickly all these things are going to happen.
I mean,
So what I'm saying to you is, you could see all these things. Is that true? Okay. Not all, but a great percentage of them within your lifetime, you could actually, because I'm 20 years older than you. So, but you could actually see a vast majority of those things happen within your lifetime, as long as you don't kick off too early and you take care of yourself. I'm just adding that in there.
Try not to, but yeah.
But that's how, and that's how fast. That's huge. Because let's say, okay, so let's say that the average age, let's say you live to 85, because that's the average age for basically for a male. So that's 40 years. So within 40 years, all those, or not all, but the vast majority of the things that we just talked about could all be in place. That's light speed. Like, we're talking about everything on earth changing in a radical way in the inside of 40 years. So look at 40 years ago. We're talking about the 80s.
Yeah, it's already changed drastically just within that amount of time.
Yeah, but this is we're talking about entirely, like, most people can't even imagine a lot of the things that we talked about. Okay, some, a very large percentage of the population couldn't even envision some of the things that we just talked about. This is why I'm saying you have to realize that it doesn't have to be, because this is what trips people up. They think, that at least 50% of the people have to start thinking this way in order to change the mass consciousness. That's not true. I've been told this over and over again, because that was always one of my beefs. I'm going, there's not enough people to make that radical a change in the mass consciousness. And I've been told over and over again that it only takes about 10%, and that we're very close already.
I would feel close. Like 10% of the world wants something positive. I would have, if not, I would be very disappointed that we're living in a place.
You have to be careful with that, because it's not about just wanting it, because it's way more than that. Okay. There's a lot of people who want all those positive things. I'm talking about, in order for the mass consciousness to shift, this is what I'm talking about. It has to be people who are able to envision that. Okay. To be able to actually envision it and to believe that it's true, and to have the intent here. Okay. This is a very big spiritual principle. Have the intent that that's the way they want it to change, because intent is everything.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're just sitting there going, oh yeah, I want world peace, but if you don't believe it can ever happen, or you can't envision a way in which it could, then you're not contributing to changing that mass consciousness.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And even still, I would think, because a lot of people I've talked to, like, again, going back to 2020, like, a lot of people started down this spiritual path. It was like, oh, we're locked down. We have nothing to do. I can't just keep watching Netflix for the rest of my life. What else can I do for myself? And they started these journeys.
Yeah, looking back now, I think that was absolute, and I know it was engineered. Okay, it was actually Let me clarify that. It was actually engineered by bad people with bad intentions. Okay, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, at least not today. But just believe that that's the truth. But it was also allowed to happen. Let's put it that way, because by spirit, by universe, by God, whatever label you want to put on it, because what it did is it forced a shift in people who would never have had the opportunity to even contemplate a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, that forced the issue for them. And the reason it forced the issue is because all the distractions disappeared. Okay. Well, not all of them, but a great number of them disappeared. Okay. And people were also forced to look at themselves.
Hmm.
Okay. Because people had all this time on their hands. They had to look at themselves. They had to look at if they were with a partner. Oh my God. Some of the, why do you think they're okay? Let's put it this way: relationships either broke apart or they cemented together, and there was no in between. Okay. People either realized that they absolutely couldn't stand this person now that they were forced to actually really live with them without the distraction,
Hmm.
or it allowed them to cement and bring their relationship to the next level. Okay. And the same thing with children and friendships. And I tell you, I learned more about my friendships during COVID than probably any other time in my life. I realized who my real friends really were, and I realized who were not my friends.
Yeah.
Okay. That was another huge thing. Okay. Is people really learned about the relationship with himself and their relationship with others. And up until that point in our modern world, especially in the developed world, people could avoid all those things. They could avoid them in myriad of ways. There was so many distractions that they could avoid. There was work. There was, entertainment. There was going out and drinking and drugging and all those things that or just being busy, like
Yeah.
people making themselves busy so that they didn't have to deal with themselves, they didn't have to deal with their partner, they didn't have to deal with their family, and then all of a sudden all that went away. And that's why so many people went into some sort of healing crisis, because they actually were allowed to realize how broken they really were. Like there's a lot of people who, and once like the song, once you can't go back and pretend. Okay. So once you know how screwed up you really are, or how screwed up your relationship is, or whatever it may be that you were forced, it held up. What it did actually is it held up a mirror to everyone.
Hmm.
You just didn't really have a choice. And actually too, a lot of people realized, or other people realized for them, how it really uncovered a lot of mental illness. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. Because there was a lot of people kind of sliding through things, and they could cover it up again through distractions. And I will tell you, and this is probably a good way to end, because we could go on talking all afternoon.
Yeah, I was
Um,
actually gonna have to start wrapping up.
yeah, I just looked at the clock and went, "Wow, we've been talking for a long time." Um, Things are going to get so much better, but I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Things are going to get worse before they get better. We're going to go through some really challenging times, and don't buy into the fear porn. It's going to be challenging. There's just no two ways about it. But the things are going to get so much better on the other side that it's just slog through it and just keep going, because it's really easy to endure things when you know that things are actually going to get better on the other side. Okay. The problem that we've had for the last 50 years is that people would go through really rough times and they'd go, "Oh my God, it's never going to get better." And that's pretty hard to do when you're going through a really rough time and keep slogging when you know that nothing's going to change. Okay. I can't think of anything worse. So and part of what's going to happen, unfortunately, I was told we're going to have another pandemic, but it's not going to be a physical pandemic. It's going to actually be a pandemic of mental illness,
Hmm.
which is going to be very difficult, and it's going to affect a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm still tracking a few different wars that are going to take place around in different areas, and that's going to impact a lot of different things too.
Yeah, it is. And I don't want to make light of it, but honestly, and I know because you said you're a veteran, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know this more than anybody else, but there's always been wars, always,
Yeah.
always, 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 and that's going to change, but it's not going to change tomorrow. And part of like there's things going to keep happening, but I think some of them are going to be like COVID was. They're going to be uh, things that initiate change faster.
Yeah.
People are finally going to see that we can't keep doing these things. And just having proxy wars just because it's in somebody else's backyard is not going to be an excuse anymore. Because that's been a huge part of what's been going on in the world. Is it's like, oh, it's over there. Doesn't affect me. Affects
Yeah.
those people. Don't have to worry about it. Okay. And that's going to stop. And that's what's going to really make, because war is never going to stop until people stop it.
Yeah, no, and
And the
that's what
reason,
I was told too about this
yeah,
time is all of these things have to happen for us to finally just kind of wake up and say, you know what, we're done. We don't want to do this anymore. We don't
it's,
want
yes,
to.
I got to bring it back. You're going to hate me. I got to
Yeah.
bring it back. It's just like we talked about smoking.
Yep.
You have to get to the point where you say, I just don't want to do this anymore. End of story. And you get enough people doing that and saying that and really meaning it. Okay. Not just saying it, but feeling it. And it's just
Yep.
like, I'm done. I'm done. And I'm not going to allow this to happen anymore. And that's what's going to make the change.
Yep. Well,
And I'm going to do you a quickie
okay.
favor. I don't know if it's a favor, but especially, unfortunately, because of where you are in the United States is going to go through an especially difficult time, more so than anywhere else, in case you haven't noticed. The
Right.
precursors are already in place, and it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, unfortunately. And it has nothing to do, well, that we could do a whole show on that on its own. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But there's certain places in the world, the States is going to have a really hard time. Certain parts of Europe are going to have a really hard time. Some parts of Central and South America are going to have a really hard time.
Yeah, no, I've been
There's
following and
energy nodes,
tracking.
yeah, energy nodes in the world that are going to have, and what that is, I'll give you the quickie, is it's really burning off bad energies that have concentrated in those areas. And the only way to get rid of those energies is for them to be released. And when you release that much negative energy, it's going to be a bit of a shit show. That's all I'm saying. But it will be so much better.
I think with that, I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I want to make sure.
We'll have to do Laura 2.0.
Yeah, a continuation of it all. Let people know where they can find you, and if they want to reach out with you, work with you. We didn't really get into your services as much as I wanted to, but
probably the easiest is check out my website at www.spiritspeaks2, the number 2.com, .me.
okay.
Or email me directly if you're interested in setting up a session, which is just Laura Hoorweg at gmail.com. Doesn't get easier than that. All over Facebook, all over Instagram, a little bit of X, a little bit of LinkedIn. But I'm sure Jeremy is going to put all my contact
Oh, yes.
info
I was just about to
in the
say
show
that.
notes.
I was just about to say that. I always like people to at least say it out loud once, just in case, and then.
Yeah.
But no, I do always put it in the show notes for people, and I hope they reach out to you, get some work done, so that they can work on becoming one of the 10% that we need. That's what we want.
Well, I can tell it. Okay, if you need an incentive, the people who are working on themselves and who are doing the work are going to have the easiest time of it. I'm not going to say that you're going to have an easy time, because none of us, it's not going to be easy for any of us. But if you're working and you've got the intention of moving forward and healing yourself and getting more in touch with who you really are, you are going to have a much easier time over the next 10 years than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
So
I will agree with that. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if something our guests shared resonated with you, connect out to them. That's what these stories are here for. And if you're looking for deeper healing or support, you can always find me at pnwshamanichealing.com. See you in the next episode.